In 1976, Congressman Ken Heckler vied for the Democratic nomination in the West Virginia governor's race. He faced primary opposition from Judge Jim Sprouse and former West Virginia Secretary of State Jay Rockefeller, great-grandson of oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller.
The people are going to come out and demonstrate that they want the kind of fresh and independent leadership which will really clean up politics in West Virginia. That's why I'm going to win on May the 11th.
When Ken decided to run for governor and give up his seat in Congress, I was appalled. I couldn't believe that he was giving up a place where he was doing so much good.
I wasn't as much interested in becoming governor as I was in getting the people to understand that it was wrong to buy an election. In 1974, I had participated in very, very good legislation to put an absolute limit on the amount of money that people could spend. And then the United States Supreme Court came along in 1976 to decide that this was a violation of freedom of speech. And so I decided to throw a long forward pass and shine the searchlight on these shenanigans in politics.
I have thousands of dedicated volunteers who are interested in cleaning up politics in West Virginia.
Any reasonably impartial observer would have advised him against it and must have advised him against it. I don't think he ever had a realistic chance of winning, but it apparently was something he just had to try.
It seems that you are concentrating on southern West Virginia in your visits, home on the weekends, things like that. Isn't it the northern part of West Virginia where you're less well known and where you ought to be?
Well, number one, in a four-way race, if I can simply capture my congressional district and the counties that I once represented, where the state legislature has gerrymandered me out of certain counties like Wood, Jackson, Lincoln, and other counties, if I can capture that, that will be enough to win.
I don't think it was a mistake. It was consistent with his behavior. He was accustomed to setting the pace. So that was not a great leap for him from the United States Congress to governor.
The 1976 race was a huge mistake for Ken because he was entering an area and a race that he was not familiar with. And he faced an avalanche of money and he was buried in it. He wasn't used to that kind of race.
I've been here now almost 13 years. All of my children have been born here. All of my married life has been here. My work has been here. My future is here.
Jay Rockefeller became the Democratic Party's nominee for governor, receiving 50% of the vote.
And to vote right in, you select the office.
Ken Heckler, after coming in third to Rockefeller in the Democratic primary, initiated a controversial write-in campaign to keep his seat in Congress.
He forfeited his chance to be the nominee for the congressional seat. Back in the primary, he had his chance. He made his choice. He ran for governor. Now that the horse is out of the barn, he wants his old seat back. I would support him if he were the nominee, but he's not the nominee. I'm supporting the nominee. I think that's what primaries are for.
I think that once all the votes are in and counted, I will have a substantial win. Our figures are showing that we have a commanding lead.
Democratic Party nominee Nick Joe Rahal, by a 6% margin, claimed the congressional seat occupied by Ken Heckler for 18 years.
What he did in Congress was enormously significant for the country as a whole. And as far as I'm concerned, he should have stayed there.
Today, I look back on it as the stupidest political decision that I've ever made.
He probably was better aligned in terms of personality to a district, a constituency in Congress than he would have been as governor, but I don't know. He could have fooled us all.
After failing to unseat Congressman Nick Joe Rahal in 1978, Ken Heckler ran successfully for the office of West Virginia Secretary of State in 1984. His new position would provide Heckler a bully pulpit, a platform from which to address and act upon issues in the public interest.
When I left Congress and went back to teaching, occasionally I would want to make a statement to news media, and they said, if you want to make a statement, write a letter to the editor.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of West Virginia, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of Secretary of State to the best of your skill and judgment, so help you God?
I do.
Hooray!
I think when he became Secretary of State, that Heckler was able to use that power that was on paper in the Secretary of State's office and really apply it wisely to make it a real activist piece of the government.
I resolved that I would make it my top priority to try to enforce the election laws and to bring West Virginia into a cleaner election process.
Secretary of State Heckler brought about the conviction of a county sheriff who sold his position for $100,000. Heckler persuaded lawmakers to require political candidates to publicly disclose loans and repayment terms. He also secured a law to prevent political campaigning within 300 feet of a polling place's outside door.
Ken believed that people had a fair opportunity to go and vote their own minds if they didn't have to go through a tunnel of politicians and political workers on their way to the door of the polling place.
This is a democratic republic form of government. And one of the things that I always admire about Ken is Ken encourages people to participate in it. He wants people to vote. He wants people to run for office. He wants people to be involved in civic activities to make our state, our nation, a better place to live.
I decided I would demonstrate that this was truly the people's office. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers to ensure that any inquiry that comes to the Secretary of State, we shouldn't simply say that's handled by another department, but rather to help that individual.
You know, usually when you go into any public figure's office, you're in a waiting room and you have to sit there and go through 2 or 3 other people. And here, anyone could just walk into his office almost any day and turn to the left, and there was Ken Heckler sitting at his desk. And he was very approachable. People could go over and praise him or criticize him or ask him for advice or give him information or ask him for information. And he was unusually accessible.
I wanted to set the tone in my office and put out a notice that any individual or any group could come in and have a news conference in that office. I said, even if you just want to come in and rest your feet, this is your office. This belongs to the people, the taxpayers who are paying for it.
That was unheard of, that he didn't have his own inner sanctum and decide who he'd see and who he wouldn't see. The man made himself so available to people because he identified viscerally with ordinary people.